Nathan, we have 64 speakers signed up for short-term rentals. And for those of you that this is your first time to council, get comfortable. The conversations, the comments are broken up pro, for, or neither. And staff chooses the order and we alternate pro, for, and neutral until one is exhausted. And I'm going to call up the first 5 speakers. I would ask that you sit in this front pew to expedite the processes, and I'll call out each individual name. You can come up and begin your remarks. I will apologize in advance for any names that I mispronounce. First 5 we are Sherry, and I apologize too. If we could keep the applause to a minimum, it just simply extends the public hearing. So if we could keep that hold on that, that would be really appreciated. Sherry Way, Mark Larnish, Margie Valdez, Renda Beard, and Shays Brady. Those are the first 5 speakers. Sherry Way, Mark Larnish, Margie Valdez, Renda Beard, and Shays Brady. So, Ms. Way, you can begin your remarks when you are ready.
Thank you. It looks like I'm up.
And you have 6 minutes. You have 6 minutes.
Very good. Council President Herndon, council members, thank you for having this hearing tonight and for asking us to speak and allowing us the permission to do so. As Councilman Clark knows, I have been involved in the short-term rental issue for at least the last 2 years, starting with Mary Beth Sussman's first meetings on this issue, but frankly, even longer than that. I was the ad hoc committee chairman for Blueprint Denver for West Washington Park. And in the process of adopting Blueprint Denver and considering that, the implications of that planning initiative for our neighborhood, we considered issues like short-term rentals and what would be an appropriate length of a rental for our neighborhood. At that time, we did extensive outreach for residents in West Washington Park and concluded that 30 days was the minimum rental that would be appropriate for our neighborhood. And we did that for many reasons. First, we thought, can you all hear me? First, we thought that short-term rentals and short-term guests in our neighborhoods was really more of a business use and not a residential use in a residential neighborhood. And as city planning has indicated tonight, short-term rentals are already permitted in appropriate commercial districts and in mixed-use districts. So we found, frankly, there was no need for this type of use in our residential districts. Secondly, we were very concerned about the nature of the use. It undercuts, in our estimation, the fabric of the residential use of the neighborhood. Why does it do that? Well, short-term rental guests, although they may not be troublesome, they may be very good people, they don't send their children to our schools. They don't support our schools that way. They don't take care of elderly neighbors. They don't shop for elderly neighbors. They don't shovel the walks for someone. They don't pick up the mail for a vacationing neighbor. They don't walk the dog for a vacationing neighbor. So it's a little bit hard to conclude that a short-term rental guest is really a residential occupant. When short-term rentals were first proposed, we were induced to consider short-term rentals on the basis of alleviating financial distress. This came up initially, as I recall, in 2008, 2009, and the economics in Denver were quite different at that time. So we were induced to think about this to enable people who might be suffering hardships to remain in their homes. We heard that. We also heard the requirement that it might enable people who needed a caregiver to remain in their homes. We also understand that. So to the point of whether or not this promotes the health, safety, and welfare of the community, perhaps for those limited bases, I could see that it would do that. However, that can very easily be done with a primary use requirement. We strongly encourage you to adopt this text amendment if you are going to approve short-term rentals without eliminating the primary residence requirement. To Nathan Batchelder's comment, you can also look at this as you go along. We have some experience under our belts. I don't think this will happen, but if it does go so swimmingly and everyone says, gee, why do we have this primary residence requirement? We can always let that go later. We cannot tread back and impose it if we don't do it now. Another point I'd like to make with my 6 minutes, and President Herndon, I hope you'll let me know if I go over. to the point of short-term rentals being a problem, because they're already here and we can't close the barn door after the cow. To that I say, sure we can. Being a business lawyer in this city for 25 years, I have to tell you, I would never recommend to my client that they engage in a business use without checking the code. And if they do it at their own risk. That is the same exact thing that's happening here with people engaging in short-term rental businesses without properly evaluating whether they're permitted or not. So in summary, I ask you to consider carefully whether you really believe that short-term rentals are consistent with residential uses in residential zones. Many of us in West Washington Park, as you've heard, do not believe that they are. However, if you are inclined to adopt this, we strongly encourage you to do so, adopt the amendment as Councilwoman Sussman has proposed it, and without eliminating the primary residence requirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Way. Next, we have Mark Larnish.
So I live downtown in a 23-story high-rise, about 160 or so units. About half of it, it's all privately owned, but about half of them are rental units. And right now, out our window, there's about 13 cranes building up brand new apartments, brand new construction, beautiful stuff. And you know, some of us who own multiple units would like to be able to use short-term rentals to combat the competition that's going on down there. So we could use that as a weapon to fight against that. This is a major revenue stream for the city that comes almost entirely from out of state. And this new sharing technology empowers homeowners on an individual basis. You know, we're talking about empowering thousands of people overnight by allowing them to do this. So this helps us combat skyrocketing costs of health care, skyrocketing costs of tuition, helps us put money away for retirement and to help our families. So just limiting it to primary residence really puts a major cap on that. We understand that you can't have people taking over these neighborhoods, buying up all the homes, and depleting the inventory, but we're hoping that whether it's tonight or someday down the road that we can come to some sort of moderate solution where we can have, you know, 2, 3, 4, whatever extra residences to rent out on our own. It allows us to have dual uses for guest houses, for family to come in, for friends to come in from out of town, and then in the meantime we can supplement our income with short-term rentals. It's really a wonderful thing. So that's all. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Sir, could you say your name for the record?
Mark Lavanish. I have terrible handwriting, so it's probably my fault.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next, we have Margie Valdez.
Good evening, members of the City Council. My name is Margie Valdez. My address is 2000 East 12th Avenue. I am the chair of the INC Zoning and Planning Committee, also known as ZAP. Approximately 2 years, a subcommittee of ZAP was organized for the purpose of analyzing the potential impacts of short-term rentals in Denver. The subcommittee held many meetings and a public forum for citizens of Denver. Over 100 residents attended the public forum. Councilwoman Sussman attended all the meetings and indeed organized and held town meetings as well. The ZAP committee and INC delegates voted overwhelmingly to support the proposed ordinance, provided the primary residency requirement was retained in the ordinance. Our position has not changed. The primary residence requirement is essential for our members. Indeed, this was a compromise for our members. Residents value the intimate quality of the quiet local streets with single-family homes. Denver's neighborhoods should not be for sale. Residents who purchased their property could not have anticipated that the house next door would turn into a motel and present issues which were not conducive to family-oriented neighborhood environment. We thank Councilman Sussman, who worked hard during the past 2 years to model an ordinance which respects the property rights of the many thousand residents in Denver. It achieves the goal of preserving our residential neighborhoods for families and ensures properties will not be converted to short-term rentals based on financial considerations, but instead those rentals will be available for those who work in Denver. I urge Council to pass this ordinance with a primary residency requirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Valdez. Renda Beard.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. So I'm here tonight to talk a bit about tax revenue on vacation rentals, both primary resident and non-primary residents, the tax revenue that it brings to our city and our state. Denver is known to be one of the top business meeting destinations as well as one of the hottest vacation spots for many worldwide travelers. So in 2015, there was over 15 million visitors and nearly $5 billion came in, and nearly $100 million in state and local revenues. So all that money went to the restaurants, attractions, transportation, businesses, and supporting people, over 51,000 people in their jobs. So Denver charges the 10.75% tax on the sale of lodging, and in the first 8 months of 2014, I found that Denver raised over $51 million through the lodger's tax, and that was an increase of over 22% from the prior year. And I just think this number will continue to become much greater with all vacation rentals contributing to this tax. And I think if we limit this to only primary residence rentals, we're actually doing a disservice to all the people who would like to visit Denver. It's important that Denver provides lodging to accommodate all desires of our tourists. One of the top reasons people pick a vacation rental home is because they like the privacy and the space and the affordability. We strongly feel that all primary resident and non-primary resident vacation rentals should be allowed in Denver and should be required to collect that lodger's tax. We need to encourage tourism in our city, and if we outlaw vacation rentals where the landlords have to be there, I think it's detrimental. So please eliminate the primary resident requirement, as all short-term rentals are a benefit to our economy.
Thank you, Ms. Beard. Next, we have Shays Brady. And as Shays comes up, I'm going to call the next speakers, Grant Swanson, Bessie Chakas, Bill Marks, and Joel Noble. You four can make your way up to the pew. You can begin your remarks.
And I'm going to correct my name. It's Shane Brady.
Shane Brady. I'm so sorry.
And I must say, I'm going to date myself, but I haven't been before City Council since Mayor Hancock was on City Council. So that was a while back. Good evening. I'm Shane Brady, and I live at 944 St. Paul Street in Congress Park neighborhood. I'm represented by Councilman New. I'm here on behalf of Capitol Hill United Neighborhoods. We're a registered neighborhood organization here in Denver. We've been around for 45 years. We are a board of 37 residents made up of those that own home and those that rent homes. Our age groups are anywhere from late 20s on up sitting on our board. So over the past 2 years, while Councilwoman Sussman had the meetings, we did follow them and listen to our delegates coming from INC over the past 2 years to learn more about the short-term rentals. We also had City Council representatives come to our Zoning, Land Use, Transportation, License Committee meeting and tell us more about this proposed ordinance. We did have a vote at our zoning committee, and we did favor that the city pass the short-term rental with conditions. We also went before our board, and our board voted to, in support of the ordinance, to change to the current zoning regulations to permit short-term rentals, provided that those are restricted to owner-occupied properties, and that was a big discussion amongst our homeowners and our renters. We also asked that the city also include the requirement of registration and licensing of short-term rentals by the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Grant Swanson.
Good evening. My name is Grant Swanson. I live in the Sunnyside neighborhood in North Denver, and I own a short-term rental property in the Berkeley neighborhood, also in North Denver. My short-term rental is not my primary residence, so if the proposals before council pass in their current form, I will be shutting down my short-term rental. I would prefer not to do that. One of the reasons that I would prefer not to do it is that I, as a citizen of North Denver, feel really good about the positive economic impact that my little rental house has on my neighborhood. I use a cleaning service to get the house ready as guests come and go. The cleaning service is owned and run by a woman who has lived in my neighborhood her whole life. She employs several of her family members. They're an awesome team. They can sweep in and get my house ready in an hour. When I was closing my books on 2015, I did the math and I saw that I paid her $5,000 in calendar 2015 for her services. And I felt really good about that for two reasons. First of all, she does a great job. I mean, that's sort of the most important thing. But it also felt really good because those $5,000 stayed right in my neighborhood. My rental property is located 2 blocks from the intersection of 44th and Lowell. If you spent time in North Denver, you know that's a really busy intersection. At last count, there are 5 restaurants arrayed around that intersection. One of the restaurants I've been going in for years, and also owned by a neighbor of mine, not a next door neighbor, but a North Denver neighbor of mine. And her restaurant is at the top of the list of the restaurants that I recommend my guests visit. Whether it's a cleaning service or it's a restaurant, having great local businesses in all of our neighborhoods is critical for the health and vitality of our neighborhoods. And my short-term rental is a small way to help support my neighborhood's economy. I would encourage the council to consider an amendment to allow non-primary residences to be used as short-term rentals so that we can continue to have the impact that we're having on our neighborhood's economies. Thank you.
Thank you. Bessie Chaka? And ma'am, you have 6 minutes.
Good evening, council members. My name is Bessie Chachis, and I live in the Alma Placida neighborhood, and my family has owned investment properties for 51 years in Denver. We own Southeast Denver, Denver Country Club, Cherry Creek, and in the Highlands also. As an investor whose family's been doing this for 51 years, I can tell you right now I'm really embarrassed about how investors are acting in the state of Colorado right now. They've really changed a lot of things that have been going on in Denver. They don't care about neighborhoods. All they care about is their bottom dollars. And that is not exactly the reason why my family's withstood the test of time over all these years, for the good years and bad years, and have the reputation that we do around, considering also our properties that we own in Denver Country Club. But there's no way that any of those people in those neighborhoods would allow an Airbnb to go on in that neighborhood. Trust me, I look like this because I had to go mow some of the lawns in between the rain and stuff today, so excuse me. But even when I work on my own properties, and the newbies that move into Denver Country Club look at me like, what is she doing here? And I'm like, we actually own this for a long time. So it's really interesting to see how investors are handling the properties today in Colorado. They make more money than renting. Right now, I went on to Airbnb and pulled up 10 listings that were up there. And 30% of them, so 3 out of the 10, of course, were investors that had their properties up. Right now, my family probably makes about a good $50,000 a month clear. If I did Airbnb right now, I'd probably make about $500,000 a month. I don't care about the money. It's all about how we are and how we represent ourselves in neighborhoods. Money is not the object when you've been running as long as my family has. It's about who we are and people know us. I grew up in Country Club. I was born there. And so riding up and down those streets, especially on Lafayette where I was born, I remember all the neighbors coming out and handing me cookies or whatever and making sure that I didn't, well, at least the sidewalks were in a lot better condition back then than they are now. But I know that families, these investors are not considering families. People that are coming in with young kids want to be able to know their neighbors and make sure that, everyone watches out for their kids. Investors don't care about that. They just care about their bottom line. The number one thing that all these investors don't understand is that it actually does lower your property values. Nobody wants to live next door to a motel. I know that I don't want to live next door to a motel. And a lot of these investors don't care about their properties, so they turn into like a Motel 6. I'm proud of the man that has a maid that has spent, $5,000, and that's great. But nobody wants to live next door to a Motel 6 when you're trying to raise your family and you want to be part of your neighborhood. There's a lot of different things that happen, and property values is the number one thing that's going to go down. And if a neighborhood gets known as an area that there's a lot of Airbnb going on there, you will see the difference, and people will start noticing that kind of stuff. So I propose that you keep the way this amendment is that you guys have going on right now. Do not allow investors to use their properties as Airbnbs. And like I said, as somebody who's been an investor for decades and decades and decades in Denver, it just makes us look worse than we are today, because we are definitely not shining through right now in the state of Colorado. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Bill Marks.
Hi there, good evening. My name is Bill Marks. I live over in the Five Points area, and I've been a VRBO, or on VRBO for 2 years. And since I've been able to have my home as a VRBO home, I've actually been able to help the neighborhood in regards to the aesthetics of the neighborhood, the way the neighborhood looks. My renters that come and rent from me are anyone from doctors, lawyers, people coming to visit sick people in hospitals, parents coming to visit children in school, as well as grandparents also coming to visit other children that might be having babies. So my property has helped within that aspect of being able to bringing that neighborhood feel. My renters also go down and use all the local businesses that are close to me. Coffee at the Point is also one of them that's near my property. The owners love the fact that I have people come down and support local businesses, which has been very nice. The thing that concerns me a little bit is that the city council is basically infringing on my property rights as a property owner. I don't like the fact that someone can tell me what I can and can't do with my home. I feel it's un-American, it's unconstitutional, and what's next? Are they going to be able to tell me that I can't have an American flag in front of my home? And I would hope that you don't do that to us, because I don't want to lose my property rights as a tax-paying citizen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marks. Next, we have Joel Noble. And as Joel comes up, I'm going to call up the next four speakers. George Mayle, John Weekly, Clover Stein, Mary Lou Finilli. Apologize if I got that wrong. Joel, you can begin your remarks.
Mr. Council President, do I have 6 minutes?
And you have 6 minutes, yes, sir.
Thank you so much. My name is Joel Noble. I live at 2705 Stout Street, and I'm here tonight speaking only for myself. I've been watching this issue for the past couple years slightly from the outside, and it was fascinating how it began. It couldn't have been more fractious. The first meetings held with Councilwoman Sussman, INC, people who are doing short-term rentals, people couldn't be further apart. Those who wanted anything to go, just let's make it legal, to those who were saying this is going to be the end of things, that the Denver Post, pretty rightfully summarized as page after page of unrelenting alarm. That's where we started. And with the leadership of Councilwoman Sussman and a lot of hard work from INC and neighbors and people all over the city, it's come together to a pretty good compromise. It's not a compromise that everybody's happy with, but I am proud of Denver when I see a topic that's given enough time that can start off with so much animosity and find a pretty good compromise. Now, Denver had a leg up in this. Unlike recreational marijuana, we weren't the first. We didn't have to invent this from whole cloth and wonder what would happen. We could look at what other cities have done. And what other cities have done is pretty much what we're doing here. We're just trying to do it a little bit better. We learned that in order to regulate short-term rentals, you need to make it easy. You need to make it inexpensive. And we're going further by making it totally online. We learned from other cities that registration number is vital to compliance. So we're doing that. We learned that you don't add a lot of costs for inspections. You inspect as needed. And the key thing that we learned is an emerging consensus across cities, and it's the primary residence requirement. Other cities have chosen this. Some cities have not chosen this and then reversed themselves and moved towards it, including Austin, Texas, which is actually the home of Home Away, the parent company of VRBO. As they learned that primary residence is a good idea. Why is it a good idea? Neighborhoods will tell you they're concerned about not knowing who lives there. So if there are issues, noise issues, trash issues, etc., they wouldn't know who to talk to. And that's a pretty good concern. But those who are lucky enough to own multiple properties say, well, I'm concerned that I won't have another way to make money off my properties. I mean, that's a pretty good concern. But what I think the key concern is for you to consider as to why the primary residence requirement is important came up in this meeting before you even went on break, and it came up more than once. It's the crisis of unaffordability of housing. This is a crisis in Denver. Redfin just came out with another report today about price escalation in Denver being higher than San Francisco. We're number one, all right? And the primary residence requirement means that we're not creating an incentive for people to take long-term rental units off the market in order to put them to use as short-term rentals. If it wasn't for the primary residence requirement, we would be creating that incentive. And I understand that there were earlier alternate ideas, and may even be presented later as amendments, that people could say, well, you could have a short-term rental at your primary residence, or if you didn't, you could have one more somewhere else. Beware of that, please, because you'd be creating an incentive for those who have the means to have a secondary house to purchase one, take it off the market, whether it was owner-occupied previously or long-term rent-occupied, and put it to use for short-term rental, and exacerbate the housing crisis by reducing the supply. So I looked around after this came to Planning Board because I did try to keep my distance on this topic and just watch it play out until Planning Board had considered it. And I found this paper from the Sustainable Economies Law Center, Regulating Short-Term Rentals, a guidebook for equitable policy. And I'm glad that Abe Barge is very familiar with this paper as well. And it summarizes what's going on around the country and different policies. And there's a lot to this. But they said, if affordable housing is a concern in your community, you want a primary residence requirement. And they go further and say, if affordable housing is a really big concern, you want a primary residence requirement and cap the number of days that it can be used. Because if you cap the number of days it can be used, you might change the economics. Someone might be willing to have a long-term renter in their ADU or in their house, in their basement apartment. And if it makes sense for them to do so, they will have a long-term renter. But if short-term rents are so much more lucrative, they'll do that. So you might cap the days. Now, the city proposal doesn't include a cap on days. It is, as this paper discusses, hard to enforce. Who's going to account for those days? And I understand why we didn't go that far. The paper is very fair, though. It does say there is a case where you might not want to consider primary residence, and that's where you want to encourage tourism and housing is an abundant supply. Someday we should have that problem of abundant supply of housing and falling rents, but we don't have that now. Please honor all the work that's gone in the last couple of years from all the many parties and honor the compromise by accepting this as is in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noble. I may have skipped over a name. The next speaker is Brian Egan. Did I say Brian Egan's name? I apologize for that. Brian Egan, then we're going to go George, John, Clover, and Mary Lou. So, yes, Mr. Egan, you can begin your remarks.
Thank you very much. My name is Brian Egan. I live at 606 Lafayette. I'm also the co-founder and the CEO of a company called Evolve Vacation Rental Network. We're headquartered here in Denver, proudly employ about 100 people. That's a number that's up about 4x in the last 18 months, and a number that we anticipate will double within the next 18 months. Our company acts as effectively a virtual property manager, helping second homeowners around North America to rent out their homes. So we have a lot of experience in this market, operating in communities throughout North America, throughout the U.S. We have about 2,000 owners who are in our network. We've conducted about 55,000 bookings across from them, or on their behalf rather, for over 275,000 nights. So it's based on that experience that I'm here to address the primary residence restriction that's in this bill and to offer our strong opposition to it. Essentially, as we look at all of the markets that we've operated within and all those 55,000 bookings, there is a very clear pattern that emerges of what works on regulation. There are 5 drivers. There's owner behavior, there's traveler behavior, there's a community impact, there's revenue impact, and then ultimately there's enforceability. Across none of those 5 drivers is a primary residence restriction versus a non-primary resident, or a primary resident host versus a non-primary resident, an effective or reliable proxy to separate good outcomes from bad outcomes, or good actors from bad actors. If you look at each of those 5 drivers, owners who are a second homeowner are no more likely to want their home to be used as a party den, or no more likely to want the erosion of equity value in their neighborhood where they own this home than a primary resident. Guests, on the very few occasions on a percentage basis where guests cause problems, they are completely indifferent as to whether they are causing problems for an owner of a primary residence or a non-primary residence. When it comes to a community impact, yes, there are things we need to be mindful of as we approach this for the first time. But again, the permitting process is the best lever and the best mechanism to watch out for communities. And nuisance issues, enforceability of nuisance laws shouldn't be discriminated between primary and non-primary. On a revenue basis, primary owners will book more, make more money, will pay their taxes on time, and are far more likely to be compliant. That is true throughout every market in North America that we've studied. And then lastly, when it comes to enforceability, I would just say this. It is very difficult for us to understand how you would know the difference between me at 606 Lafayette renting my house 3 months a year and living in it 9 months a year, and then the following year, so vice versa, living in it 3 months a year and renting
Mr.
9
Egan,
months a year.
I'm sorry, your 3 minutes are up.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. George Mayo.
Good evening, council members. My name is George Mayo. I'm a retired CW3 United States Army officer, Master Army Aviator, combat pilot, and I am a neighborhood advocate. So let's start real from the beginning. I've been involved with short-term rentals since 2010, when I took 2 bad players in Corey Merrill and Stokes Place to Board of Adjustments hearing because for a year and a half it took that to shut them down. From the wild parties, the noise, the trash, the parking, this went on, and it was a year and a half before we finally got this stopped. I know a bad player. I've been involved with this for 6 years. So let's just say it's kind of funny when people come up and talk about it. But you know, in the codes, what part of tenancy is arranged on month-to-month or longer basis? This is the law of Denver. And what part of this law did none of these people understand? Did you not know this? That it's against the law, and it is now. Not once in all of our meetings, Mary Beth, and thank you very much for what you're doing, have any of these people stood up and said, I apologize for breaking the law. I apologize to my neighbors for being a bad player. I know that this has been illegal, but I still continue to do it, and I apologize. I've never heard one of them say, I think I'll cease and desist until the city council changes the rules. I've never heard that from anybody. I'm kind of ashamed about that. But anyway, that's my perception. You know, it's when I think about it, you have to go back 250 years. And I went back to the Federalist Papers of James Madison. And it probably holds true here as it did then when he stated how to guard against factions or groups of citizens with interests contrary to the rights of others or the interests of the whole community. Think about that. That does apply with a lot of online, whatever you call them now, short-term rental people. So anyway, in conclusion, primary resident. I can't stress how important it is that you go back to your neighborhood and the peace and contentment that you have, knowing who your neighbors are. Residential neighborhoods are not commercial enterprise zones. They were never meant to be. This is why we have ordinances against less than month-to-month at the present time. So with that in mind, I think the free passes are over with.
Chief.
It's time to end free passes.
Thank you, Chief. Next, John Weekly.
Thank you, council members. My name's John Weekly. I live in University Hills. These are the facts. Short-term rentals are good for Denver. They empower individuals, encourage creativity, add to the versatility of our progressive city, and they make our neighborhoods better kept, updated, and more beautiful than our reactionary neighbors. They create jobs. Imagine
Mr. Weekly.
you and
Mr. Weekly.
creating jobs.
Mr. Weekly, if you could please address the council. Yeah.
Simple jobs like lawn care, house cleaning, being created by you and me. That's good for everyone. And to think some of you are still scared of something that does not exist in this industry, corporations and big investors. This fear is not information to base our decisions on. This fear is not what we build public policy on. We don't make decisions based on what might happen. Let's be clear. If you support the primary residence restriction, you oppose short-term rentals. You cannot say you are in support of short-term rentals and at the same time say, but I support a primary residence restriction. That doesn't work. To be operated correctly, homeowners generally will need to have another residence. Why? It's pretty simple, actually. Where's the primary residence supposed to go when their primary residence is rented? Well, I'll state the obvious. They would go to their second home, which would make their second home their first home. Or would it? Now there lies the confusion. For the sake of simple, functional legislature, drop the primary residence restriction. To support primary residence, you're not in favor of improving Denver. You're not in favor of saying to the rest of the state, the country, and the world that we are progressive and that we're willing to accept and regulate change in technology. You are not saying I accept versatility and smart growth. You are saying I don't want STRs. You are saying I don't want to improve anything. There is no in-between. The primary residence restriction is not a compromise. It's a sabotage. To be clear, to support it means you are intentionally swayed by the fear, not the reality, of major operators taking over your neighborhood. The reality is this is not happening and won't happen because it is simply too laborious and time-consuming to be profitable for a larger business. There are much easier ways to make a dime, and these rentals are labors of love more so than profit machines that interest corporations. Please support STRs as the majority in the know do. by voting down the primary residence clause and moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weekly. And audience members, I would please ask that speakers address the council, and we admire the passion on both sides, but we ask if we would be respectful of those speakers and keep our comments to ourselves, please. Next, we have Clover Stein.
Hi, I'm Clover Stein. I live in Breckenridge, Colorado. I have 2 properties in the Sunnyside neighborhood. One of them is a short-term rental. And I would just like to say that I agree with the last speaker in saying that if you move forward with a primary residence requirement, it is like saying that you don't want short-term rentals. I keep hearing a lot of people say that having short-term rentals in our neighborhoods is like having a hotel in our neighborhoods, and I'd like to address that idea, as I feel it's not in any way an accurate depiction of what short-term rentals are. They are not hotels. Hotels are high-density, mass occupancy commercial buildings that do not look anything like the surrounding homes. Once a hotel is built, it will always be a hotel. It will accommodate many different groups of people at a time. The guests are welcome for as little as 1 night. As long as they have a credit card, there is 0 discrimination. Short-term rentals are duplexes or single-family homes that look just like all of the surrounding homes. They accommodate 1 group at a time. The majority of these rental properties have at least a 3-night minimum stay. Guests are pre-screened by owners who have a vested interest in keeping their properties in good condition and in keeping a strong standing within their community. Short-term rentals are fluid. A hotel will always be a hotel, but a short-term rental could one day be a long-term rental or a primary residence as needs dictate. We are fortunate to live in a country where home ownership allows us the right to use our property as our needs fluctuate. Currently, our home is a second home for us. It is a short-term rental. One day it'll be a long-term rental. One day it'll be a primary residence. One of our recent guests wrote, "We were a party of 3 small children, barely outnumbered by 4 adults, a mom, a dad, and grandparents. We were in Denver for the wedding of our son, our brother-in-law, and we could not imagine spending 5 days in a hotel. This home was the perfect solution." They went on to detail the amenities that they appreciated: sitting on the front porch with the kids while the others slept in, cooking in the backyard with their family from within the neighborhood, using the grill, the patio set, the backyard, which was fenced in. Our guests are the sons and daughters, the brothers, the sisters, the grandparents, the parents of people who live in these neighborhoods. They are threads in the fabric of these neighborhoods. They are not random strangers. They spend their money here at all of the neighborhood restaurants and businesses. They enhance the character of the neighborhood. They do not take away from it. If non-primary residency rentals are banned, visitors to the city will be forced to stay in expensive hotels far from their families, or rent out a spare room in the primary residence of a stranger, or stay in a home that is full of somebody else's primary residence sort of things, which is uncomfortable for everyone.
Ms. Stein, your 3 minutes are up.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mary Lou Fanelli, and as Fanelli comes up, I'm going to call the next 4 speakers: Craig Ellsworth, Michael C. Becker, Aaron Streets, who has 6 minutes, and John Neiman. Mary Lou, you can begin with your remarks.
Good evening. I'm Mary Lou Fanelli. I support limiting short-term rentals to primary residences only. I have lived in the 800 block of Steel Street in Congress Park for 29 years. This single-family neighborhood facilitates connections, relationships, commitment, and stronger neighborhoods. We know each other, talk with each other, socialize with each other, help each other, care for each other. We are the village that participates in raising children, attending christenings, bar mitzvahs, graduations, and weddings, buying Girl Scout cookies and Boy Scout popcorn. We are baby, child, pet, and house sitters, helping hands, supporters through family crises. We are the kind of neighborhood that makes Denver a wonderful place for families of all kinds to live. My neighbors and I discovered this spring that the 2-story Craftsman bungalow at the end of the block was an STR advertised on Airbnb as the Steel Street Estate. Although that listing has been removed, 800 Steel Street appears on VRBO. Same content, no fancy title. Described as great for groups, Sleep 16, it has housed groups of 11, 14, 15, 16. 800 Steel Street is not anyone's primary residence. Would you like this house on your block? 800 Steel Street was owned for 23 years by a couple who raised 4 children to adulthood. Their home hosted many neighborhood events. Very loud parties and music emanate from 800 Steel Street during the day and into the night. Numerous non-resident cars park on Steel and Adams Streets, diminishing parking for residents and their families and friends. Bags of garbage and overstuffed recycle bins are visible from our front porches. Residents occasionally have loud parties, but we know each other and must continue to live with each other. We can ask a neighbor to tone it down, take it inside, or cut it off at a particular time, and have that request respected. Strangers have no such allegiance to those who live here. Commercial entities such as 800 Steel Street limit the property rights of the surrounding homeowners, as we are being deprived of the privacy and quiet enjoyment of our primary residences and having our property values diminished. Today's Denver Post reports 2,000 STRs in Denver, how those could help alleviate the city's shortage of housing stock. Investors who bought and renovated these properties knew that STRs were illegal. They chose to take this risk. Profit-making, not community service, motivated them. The future sale of larger homes in single-family neighborhoods.
Ms. Finelli, your time is up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Conclude. Thank you. Mr. Craig Ellsworth. 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Craig Ellsworth. I'm a Denver resident and owner of a short-term rental property. I'm also a member of the Capitol Hill United Neighborhood Association. When I applied for and obtained my business license and lodger's tax ID, I told the city exactly what I was doing, operating a short-term rental. I support the proposed ordinances with the exception of the primary residence requirement, which I believe will effectively hand Airbnb a monopoly in Denver's short-term rental market and deprive Denver's visitors of the choice to rent a private home for their stay. These council bills proclaim to create, quote, a fair operating environment for all persons in the business of lodging, end quote. In reality, the primary residence requirement unfairly favors Airbnb over competing platforms such as HomeAway and VRBO, which, by the way, was founded here in Colorado, unfairly favors hosts who rent a portion of their home over those who rent their entire home, and unfairly forces hundreds of Denver property owners like myself out of the short-term rental market. Over 900 people have signed an online petition calling on Denver City Council to enact regulations that do not limit short-term rentals to primary residences. Here's what a few of them have to say. Pam, Arizona's governor clearly realizes that creating a monopoly for Airbnb and forcing visitors to stay in owner-occupied homes is bad for the state. Anthony, I prefer a short-term rental because it connects me with neighborhoods and communities. It gives me an opportunity to experience places in a way that I would not be able to do if I were forced to stay in a hotel. Brian, my family travels to Denver every year and we stay at short-term rentals. We have a daughter with special needs, and staying at a hotel is simply not a good fit for our family. When people visit Denver, their transportation choices are virtually unlimited. Visitors can get around by rail, bus, shuttle, bike, taxi, rental car, car-to-go, zip car, Uber, Lyft, and even by horse and carriage. Why then would you restrict their choice of accommodations? I urge you to do the right thing. Please do not hand Airbnb a monopoly. Do not force us out of the short-term rental market, and do not deprive visitors the choice of renting a private home for their stay in Denver. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ellsworth. Michael C. Becker.
Hi, I'm Michael C. Becker. I'm a law professor and a political science scientist at DU. And what I'm here to do is advocate that the council adopt perhaps the most flexible rules governing short-term rentals to preserve a very robust market. What I'm not going to do is lecture you about the law. Unless you want to go to sleep really quickly, I can do that. But what I'd like to do is just share some anecdotal experiences that help you understand how families like mine find it absolutely essential to have a vibrant market for short-term rentals. So the first reason is, but for short-term rentals, my family simply would not be able to travel. My husband and I have 3 small children. 2 of them have special needs. We have tried the hotel route, and it is simply impossible. There are very few hotels that have 3 adjoining rooms. They cannot be adequately supervised. They need to be in a home environment just like ours, where routine is very important, and we have dinner together, the children make their beds, they cook with us, and they clean. Something that is stable, and that is what many families prefer and need.
Mr. Seebecker, could you please speak in the microphone?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Prefer and need. Let me put it down a little bit. So, for instance, when there was a calamity at our house here in Denver, we had to move out for a month. We had to stay in 2 different short-term rentals. Could not find a hotel that would accommodate our family. But we did live in homes that were available to us. And there's not a huge market right now, actually, for homes that are accommodating my family. I think we need a more robust market than less. When we visit my mother, who's 85 in Wisconsin, we cannot visit her unless there is a home that we can live in for a short period of time. There are no hotels available where she lives. When we take my other in-laws with us on vacation, which we just did to San Diego, one of my in-laws is battling cancer. She cannot stay in a hotel adequately supervised by the rest of us. We have to stay in one family unit in a house together. So that's one reason we can't travel but for this opportunity for short-term housing. The second is it really allows us to live in a healthy community environment. We choose to live in areas where we can walk the streets, participate in the community, go get ice cream at the neighborhood ice cream shop. We're not interested as a family in living next to the airport in a convention hotel. Finally, I think it actually promotes responsibility. We are not the partiers, and I don't think there are many. There may be some, but I think the vast majority of folks who do this are interested in respecting the owners of the property, just like you would respect your own home. One of the people from whom I rented right here is now one of my very good friends. People who had rented from me when I previously had a VRBO property have become my very good friends. Stayed at my rental property for 10 years in a row at Thanksgiving. And actually became such good friends. She's out here visiting right now for my husband's retirement party, which I'm skipping to.
I apologize. Your 3 minutes are up.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Aaron Streets? Aaron Streets? She left? Okay. Next, John Neiman.
Hello and good evening. My name is John Joseph Neiman. Everyone calls me JJ. I live at 2786 South Wolf Street. I come here as a resident, but I also come here as the president of the Denver Interneighborhood Cooperation, also a board member of the Harvey Park Improvement Association. We have done, as INC, a lot of research and worked very closely with council to understand the different finer points of this short-term rental discussion. And if you'll bear with me on an allegory, another one of these floods happens, and a Denverite goes up into the mountains and is going along our rivers and sees thousands of rainbow trout have been washed up on the shores. And he sees one person there on the shore picking up the rainbow trout one by one and throwing them back into the river. And he goes up to this young man and he says, "Why are you doing this? There's thousands of fish along this riverbed. There's no way that you could save them all." And he grabs one fish and he looks at him and he says, "Yeah, but at least I saved this one," and threw it into the river. Now, I'm not saying we have all the answers to what short-term rentals are going to be, but I do know that our neighborhoods are vital. They don't need to be revitalized. We don't need even more business investment in our neighborhoods. What we need is a way for these sharing economies to help build and protect neighborhoods. We have over 2,600 or 266,000 households that fall within the registered neighborhood organizations that are members of Denver INC, and most of them have the opportunity to be able to participate in the process. And over the last 2 years, we've heard from so many of those residents. And what we are consistently hearing is that short-term rentals are illegal for a reason, and that a lot of the residents would like to see them stay illegal. But through our work and we have seen that having this restriction is a compromise. It's a compromise that allows neighborhoods to take charge and be in charge of how their homes are relating to business use around their homes. As Kevin Flynn talked about in my neighborhood, there was one property where someone lived there and then moved away and proceeded to rent it out to a bunch of short-term rental people that did not respect that neighborhood. And it took more than a year, even with an HOA covenant, for that neighborhood to be able to stand up for the kind of community that they wanted. I think the rule that we're trying to pass today is a good one, and it'll allow the neighborhoods to continue to have input into how their neighborhoods are organized. I look forward to working with Stacy Lauk as we find more ways to regulate, and without the primary restriction, I don't see how the neighborhoods could support this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neiman. All right, I'm going to call the next 5 speakers. Michael Guggenheim, Lance Musselman, John Ludwig, Chris S., and Gina D'Ambrosia. So, Mr. Guggenheim, you can begin your remarks, and the other 4, you can go ahead and take a seat at the front pew.
Thank you. I'm Michael Guggenheim, and I live in the Bonnie Brae neighborhood and have lived in Denver since 1981. I've been a long-term property owner, a long-term rental property owner, and a short-term property rental owner, so I have covered the gamut. I have had on the same block, and I've had 2 short-term rental properties at one time. Now we have 1, and we're soon to have 0 by the end of the year. But I have a strong interest in there not being a primary residence provision. I'm also a member of the Denver Short-Term Rental Alliance, which is there's a group of us that have we obviously oppose the primary residence provision, and I'd like to speak to the issue of enforcement and compliance as a builder in Denver as well. I'm very familiar with enforcement and compliance and the necessity of it. We are a group that is interested in regulation. We are interested in enforcement. We are interested in compliance, and all of those things can contribute, if done correctly, to short-term rentals that contribute to the fabric of the neighborhood. I would invite Councilman Cashman, whose neighborhood I'm in, to come take a look at the properties that I have. They are beautiful. We have had 0 complaints from neighbors. My neighbors are aware of what I'm doing, and they all have a way to get a hold of me if there were to be any issues, which there have not been. And I think that's important for anybody who is doing short-term rentals to have that communication with their neighbors, whether long-term or short-term. We have paid tens of thousands of dollars in lodging tax in Denver. And it is, at this point, I think that if there were to be a primary residence provision, as has been mentioned by others previously here this evening, it would be a death sentence for short-term rentals. I would never go to a place where somebody has all of their belongings at the home, wouldn't feel comfortable there. We've had families that have been in town for a number of reasons. Professor Seebecker, who spoke earlier, was a guest of ours, and we are wonderful friends now. And his family was fabulous, and we have many guests like that, and we promote and support short-term rentals without the primary residence provision. Thank you.
Thank you. Lance Musselman.
Good evening, council members. My name is Lance Musselman. I live in Washington Park East. Been there for over 30 years, raised a family there, been involved in community affairs, and I'm invested in the community. I'm here to support the amendment that restricts STRs to primary dwellings. I also support the companion bill, the excise and licensing on implementing that. I believe it's well thought out. I believe it can work. I do believe I have cautions about going beyond the primary residence. This legislation is going to introduce an endless stream of legal transients into every neighborhood. These people are not invested in our neighborhood. They don't know us. What stays in Vegas, or what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, will now be what happens in Denver stays in Denver. This is a grand social experiment endorsed by public policy. I believe it's incumbent upon the council to proceed cautiously. You have the time to do it right, to make sure you take care of problems as they come up. I urge you to do that and not rush into this precipitously and expand it to the point where we have thousands of these basically legalized neighborhood hotels everywhere in Denver. Thank you.
Thank you. John Ludwig.
Good evening, council members. My name is John Ludwig, and I advocate for short-term rentals. I was a teacher and principal in Denver Public Schools and had the honor of working with many of the children in the city. And the one thing I taught them, I hope I taught them that they took with them, was to eradicate fear through knowledge. And when you know people and you meet people and you see different cultures walk into your world, it opens your eyes. And I'd like to speak primarily to that. I have some individuals being a teacher, I'm big on show and tell, so I brought my friends with me. But there's a gentleman here from France, from Bordeaux, France, who mowed my lawn today. I bet you I'm the only one in the room who got that done. Okay, there's a gentleman over there that is an Airbnb host for my wife, who travels extensively. I married a genius for the sake of the children, so off she goes, and she works in hospitals. And she was going from Hilton to this hotel to that hotel, and no, sir, we don't know where she is because room 302 isn't answering. Now my friend Stefan calls me and says, Shan had a hard day at work. What can we do? I said, try scotch first, then butter pecan ice cream secondly. And he went out and bought the ice cream for her. That's what we have in this Airbnb relationship. My next door neighbor went to the hospital with a bellyache, came back with stage 4 ovarian cancer. We're all devastated, blew us out of the water, every one of us. These gentlemen are French cooks. They went across the street and they shared recipes for 2 hours. For 2 hours, she was cancer-free. I think that's important. I think that's where we got to deal with it. You got to open your eyes and look at the rest of the world. And they're coming to Denver. Boy, howdy. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Chris S.
Good evening, Council. I'm Chris Sipes, and I'm relatively new to the Denver area. I just kind of want to point out that since 2015, the amount of complaints related to the short-term rental market as investigated by the City of Denver, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 total complaints in relationship to short-term rentals in the city of Denver that were investigated per our last one of the council meetings. I think it's a little overzealous, maybe a little rushed to consider this kind of statistic against several thousands of these short-term rentals that we have been stating, and some of the debates we've had that we go to shut down something that is showing such great community building, and also opportunities for someone like me to be in Denver and enjoy what you guys got here, and then work up to be a primary resident in this fine state or city. And I'm also currently living in downtown, and I'm in a very healthy community where there are short-term rentals, and I want to say that the neighbors and the neighborhood is better off with it, and those people that I meet and interact with daily tend to be some of the highlights and really good part of my time here in Denver.
Thank you. Gina and D'Ambrosia. Is Gina in the chambers? Oh, she left? Okay, I will call the next 5 speakers. They are John Beck, Chris Betton, Lane Bates, James Slotta, and Jeff Mako. So you 5 can make your way up, and Mr. Beck, John Beck, you can begin your remarks.
That's me. So my name is Mr. Beck.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Denver Short-Term Rental Alliance. I own a single-family home located in the Lower Highland neighborhood of Denver. I've owned this property for about 3 years, during which time it's been operated entirely as a short-term rental. I don't live on the property. I have some prepared remarks, but I think most everything's been spoken, and I'd like to kind of go off my prepared remarks, make a few other comments. I think Mr. Egan said it best, that there is a disconnect between the issues that people think that we're solving with these proposed ordinances requiring primary residency and the real issues that are out there. And the Evolve people, he's the CEO of that particular company, they've been able to really narrow in on the things that do impact bad performers and bad tenants and bad owners. And I don't believe it's necessarily a primary residency requirement. So I think we should be very careful, because there's an opportunity here to legislate or to create an ordinance that doesn't actually do what we want it to do, but it will kill an industry. We know that. I think it's been said that there's a lot of people that are going to go out of business. I would be one. I was going to go through the statistics of how much money that I've made that has stayed here in the Denver area over the last 3 years that I've owned my property. It's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Housekeepers, restaurants, and that's a lot of people. And to say a little bit about the people that stay in these VRBOs and these short-term rentals, I have a family of 5, and I exclusively stay everywhere I go. We travel all around the country. It's always a home. It's always in a residential neighborhood. You know, we are impeccable in determining that we were going to keep that house as perfect as it was when we found it. They're all impeccably maintained. The house that I have, I've spent $100,000 in maintaining it over the last 3 years. It's perfect. It's better than all of my neighbors' houses. I have to do that in order to continue to attract people. It's a beautiful place. And so that will go away. And when you look at it across the board, that's a lot of money going out of the local economy. And I don't believe you're going to get what you think you're going to get with this ordinance. You are going to lose the industry. And I think, you know, it's fighting against a trend that it's inevitable. Anyway, those are just my comments. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I urge you to consider removing this restriction.
Thank you, Mr. Beck. Chris Betton. Chris Betton no longer in chambers? Okay, next we have Lane Bates.
Good evening, Council. My name is Lane Bates. I live downtown. I do own another property in the Curtis Park neighborhood, just a couple blocks from Coffee on the Point. A little bit about the demographics of people that come and stay at my property. Most of them are of the tourists/visitors, are families that are traveling as a family, 700 square feet. The average visitor is approximately 50 plus in age and is traveling with their children or grandchildren. They rent STRs to attend graduations, weddings, baby births. A lot of the older couples rent it to come visit their grown children that live here in Denver. They rent STRs so they can stay as a family in a home without incurring high costs associated with purchasing a suite at a hotel. It's not to say hotels aren't bad. I stay in hotels myself sometimes. STRs used in this capacity must be pristinely maintained. They're reviewed after every stay. They must be maintained interior and exterior. As such, lawns are maintained. Property owners continue to invest in home improvements to attract tourists to their homes. It's competitive, thus increasing the property value of the neighborhood. 2 additional points. Number one, the effect of the regulation. We know how many, because we can go on the website, how many Airbnbs and how many HomeAways are here in the city of Denver. What we do not know, and if we pass this regulation, we do not know how many of those are primary occupancy. So we could, as the last speaker noted, completely wipe out this industry. We just don't know. And I don't think there's any data out there that I have seen that shows the number of listings their primary occupancy. The other thing that has been noted is this does favor one platform over another platform. And finally, hotels have a place in this business in tourism. STRs have a place in tourism. But the one thing I'll note is that when you build a hotel, it's built. It will always be a hotel. When you have a residence that is an STR, it can go to a long-term rental, it can become a residence, you can sell it on the open market, or it can go back to a short-term rental. It's scalable. As the market expands, as it contracts, with the number of tourists that come into town, it can go from long-term, short-term, and then you can sell it to somebody else. Once you build a hotel, it's built. I'm strongly opposed to this primary residency requirement. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. James Slaughter? Okay, thank you, sir. Jeff Mako? Jeff Mako is not in chambers. All right, then we are moving right along. The next speakers are Nick Magno, Janelle Kinney, Andrea Phillips, Charles Bush, and Robert Cotton. So, is Nick in the building? Nick Magno? Oh, he's Robert. Okay, so does not seem Nick is in chambers. Next is Janelle Kinney.
I'm Janelle Kenny. I live in the Overland neighborhood. I want to highlight the arbitrary and discriminatory nature of the primary versus non-primary requirement. I'm actually a primary resident and am a constant advocate for allowing the non-primary residents because the primary occupancy requirement is unsubstantiated. There's no data that supports the claim that absentee owners are less responsive to neighbors' needs and concerns, or that they generate any more or less complaints. Making non-primary residency rentals illegal, but legalizing primary occupancy residence is discriminatory. It is inconsistent with other Denver rental legislation. Long-term rentals are not held to the same requirement. They do not have to have an owner living on the property to be in compliance with city zoning. To illustrate the ineffectiveness of this requirement, in 2015, I quit my job and went on a 6-month round-the-world travel adventure. I continued to rent my house out on VRBO and hired a friend to arrange all bookings, manage the cleanings, and act as the primary point of contact. I was far removed from the daily operations. In contrast, I have friends who, upon the birth of a child, upgraded their home less than a mile away. They decided to keep their first home and rent it out on VRBO. They manage all bookings themselves, arrange for the cleanings and maintenance, and personally go and visit the house between guests. In both scenarios, the house is well maintained, cared for, and the consideration of the neighbors and neighborhood is high. The irony is that the first scenario, mine, is completely legal because I'm the primary resident, even though I wasn't even on the same continent. In the second scenario, where the owners visit the house on a regular basis and are the direct contact with the guest, that is illegal because they are not the primary residents of their second home. There are hundreds of families in Denver, much like my friends, who treat their short-term rental not only as their asset, but as their home, because it is their home. Please consider voting no to the legislation as it's written, and instead work to pass regulations that are fair, consistent, and non-discriminatory. Thank you.
Andrea Phillips? Andrea Phillips? All right, next, Charlie Bush.
Hi, my name is Charlie Bush, and I live at 715 South Sherman, 2 blocks within the I-25 and Broadway light rail station. I have 2 STRs within a half a block of my home, one Airbnb and one VRBO. They both started out the same way. Somebody bought them as flips, then they tried to sell them for more than $200,000 over the market rate. Now they're both STRs. Let me share with you what it's like living this close to 2 STRs. West Wash Park has older homes. We have a very green way for air conditioning. We open our windows at night and turn on the fans. However, every Friday and Saturday, and sometimes during the week, we have parties. The VRBO on Lincoln seems to favor the Texas frat boys that invite 30 to 70 of their closest friends that they've never met for an all-night party. The police are repeatedly called. The renters don't care. They leave in the morning. Mothers of small children have called me at 3 o'clock in the morning in tears, begging me for help with the party next door. I have complied only to wake up to multiple broken beer bottles on my front lawn. I didn't call the cops because I knew these guys were already at the airport. We have lost 2 young families with children on our street in the last year alone because of the threat of STRs. The STRs have turned our friendly, everybody else has everybody's back hamlet into an organizing bunch of vigilantes. Let me repeat that. Our nice little neighborhood is turning into vigilantes, and we despise it. But we're not going to stop because there's no laws and the police can't stop what's going on. I had to throw 2 gentlemen off my porch that were shaking up spray cans and say, no, 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 property damage is not the answer. We do have a number of long-term rentals too. To be honest, those owners do not contribute to the neighborhood, but their renters do. They have learned how to have good renters, and we as neighbors turn them into better renters. It can take some time to have them shovel their walks and mow their lawns, but they get there. And they enthusiastically watch our backs and watch the street, and especially when we have our front porch parties. We are able to achieve this because somebody lives in the property for more than 2 days in a row. Primary residency. If you throw out the primary residency, then throw out the zoning code and throw out the money you're going to spend on Blueprint Denver, because the difference between residential and commercial will no longer exist. Our residential neighborhoods are for Denver residents, not for Denver tourists, and not for Denver commercial stock. Residential does not mean hotel on every block or every other house. Residential means long-term community. If it's good enough for the other cities, it's good enough for Denver. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Cotton.
Good evening. My name is Robert Cotton. I'm a resident of Northwest Denver. I'm a software engineer by trade, and in my line of work, we build our business on data. We collect a lot of data, and we make lots of decisions on data. And in the places that we don't have data, we have blind spots in our decision-making process. And we work very hard to eliminate those blind spots because it impacts the type of decisions that we make, because we are not making those decisions based on data. By having the primary residence restriction in this provision, we will be eliminating half of the data that is available to us in studying short-term rentals as we go forward. By having only primary resident rentals, we will eliminate non-primary resident rentals and will not be able to understand how it is that those rentals will behave. Those rentals are happening today. Short-term rentals are happening in houses. They are happening in primary residence and non-primary residence. So it is, as Nathan was pointing out, is this feasible? Today it is feasible, but we don't have any data. I've been attending the town halls, and it's not surprising, because it is in fact illegal, that there is a lack of data that provides information as to how it is to drive this decision-making process. By having a short-term resident restriction, we will be eliminating that data. The short-term rental market is lucrative, and there will be bad actors that will happen and will operate outside the bounds of the law. We won't have any visibility into that sort of into that activity. Compliance will be much higher if we have short-term, non-primary resident short-term rentals available as an option for Denver residents to be able to do this. We will know the number of houses that are being used for this purpose. Today, it's less than 1/10 of 1%, or less than 1/10 of a percent of housing in Denver. We will know the behavior of those operators, both the tenants and the owners of those houses. We will understand the tax revenue of those houses. Most importantly, we will understand the compliance. The easier it will be to comply, the easier it will be to bring those people into the fold and have compliance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cotton. Call the next 5 speakers: Tim Oburn, Ness Abdulhaman, Jill Bishop, Damon Hertz, and Charlotte Winzenberg. Those are the next 5. First one is Tim, so you can begin your remarks.
My name's Tim O'Byrne. I live at 508 South Clarkson. I've been living in Denver for about 59 years now. I grew up in Park Hill. We had the smallest family on the block. We only had 6 kids. People across the street had 10. People 2 doors down had 13. So we had big families, and we were all very close. Everyone knew each other pretty well. And surprisingly, a lot of these people are still my friends. I'm very excited with what the changes I've seen in Denver over the past few years. It's a little scary with so much going on now for us old farts that have been here, but it's really exciting to see the changes going on, transportation, different things like that. But I do feel one of the key ingredients to Denver, to making it this great city to live in, is the neighborhoods. And I sincerely believe that the short-term rentals will not work, they will not help that. Just this past about a month ago, I woke up early on a Friday morning, and I could hear babies crying in our neighborhood. And the families are moving back into Denver now. For so long, people were moving to the suburbs. And I sincerely believe that with the short-term rentals, if we are going to have them, what it looks like we are, that we do need the primary resident as a concern. I was talking earlier about some of the things in Denver that excite me. There was something this week about the Denver Prepares Final Smart City Challenge pitch to win $50 million for transportation. That's pretty cool. But I don't think we can use the term smart city if we don't regulate these short-term rentals. Thank you.
Thank you. Nes Abdulrahman.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Nes Abdulrahman. I live in downtown Denver and own a couple of properties there. I do not currently do short-term rentals. However, I would like the opportunity to do that in the future. I can see that as council members, you have a very daunting task. There's impassioned pleas from both sides of the argument here. And I'll keep my comments very, very short. I do understand the dilemma, keeping affordable housing affordable, while at the same time respecting and encouraging the rights of contributing members of society to earn a living, either through supplementing or that might be their sole source of income. I do also understand we don't want corporate takeover of our rental market. By the same token, I do understand we don't want actors that are not part of the community that are going to cause a disturbance. My experience is solely from friends of mine that have done short-term rentals, and my understanding is the vast majority of the people that stay in their units are very responsible professionals, lawyers, doctors, performing actors, and so forth. So to keep it short, what I would like to say is I think a fair compromise would be not to have carte blanche on non-primary residents, but at the same time not to restrict to primary residents only. To have a fair balance, maybe just a couple of units that residents own could be allowed for short-term rentals. I think that would be a fair compromise. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jill Bishop.
Hi. Thank you for the snacks, Raf, even though he's not here. My name is Jill Bishop, and I live in Park Hill at 25th and Monaco, and I'm a Denver native, and I have a lot of pride about Denver. I like to spend my tax money in Denver and so on. I've been an Airbnb host probably longer than anybody who's spoken. I signed up before the DNC in 2008. I've had well over 1,000 guests, but it's in my home where I live too. And I'm single, and I've never had one bit of fear or safety issue. Thanks in part to all the safety features built into Airbnb, I get to choose exactly who comes to stay in my house. And even before they come, they are not random strangers. There's absolutely nothing scary about any of this. The only thing that scares me is having to put my license number, publish it for all to see, in case anybody really wanted to find out who I was and where I lived. They could, only thanks to that regulation that you're going to impose. But I totally support Mary Beth's proposal and hope that you will vote for it. People come for every reason imaginable, and some people say it's not sharing, but I totally share my home, and I share meals, and I share experiences. And because of that, I was a host first, but that's the only way I like to travel. When I was in Paris last November, and I was staying in an Airbnb apartment with the host there, and the attacks happened, and we both stayed up all night watching the TV and talking and stuff. And when I left, he said, "Oh, I enjoyed having you so much, and I especially was glad you were here the night of the attacks." And I felt the same way, that I was so glad I wasn't alone in a hotel room the night of the attacks in Paris. People are wonderful. The guests who come are absolutely wonderful. I've had well over 1,000, and I can only say I've had 2 that I wouldn't want back, but there was nothing like really bad about them. I just, didn't care for them that much. And you know everything about the economy, and if the Kirkland Museum gave out awards for people who send people there, I would be number 1. I'm sure I've sent, they're closed now, but I'm sure I've sent 150 people to the Kirkland Museum. One thing Airbnb has done for me is it's made me, I think I retired from teaching about a year earlier because of my Airbnb income. And my daughter lives in the Berkeley neighborhood and does Airbnb, and I think she would be on welfare if she didn't have that income. And she and her boyfriend are artsy-fartsy types, and even though he plays in... where's the light for the time?
It's right there, and it just turned red. I'm sorry.
Is it? Oh, it's over there.
You hit 3 minutes exactly, Ms.
Okay,
Bishop.
I'll be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Damon Hurst. Is Damon in chambers? Nope. Charlotte Winsenberg.
Hello, everybody. My name is Charlotte Winsenberg, and I live at 590 South Sherman. And I come to speak in support of the ordinance regulating short-term rentals. For 2 years, I've served on the ad hoc committee of INC that has been addressing short-term rentals, and I have 3 points that I really want to emphasize with you. Number 1, the ordinance before you reflects the work of council, staff, and the citizens of Denver. Its most important element is the restriction allowing only primary occupants of homes to obtain licenses for short-term rentals. Any relaxation of this requirement really voids the whole purpose of the ordinance. You might as well just forget it, because what we need is, we're trying to do here is protect the nature of residential zoning. And I think it's unfortunate that many of these operators of the short-term rentals don't really understand what zoning is for. And residential zoning is very important. There probably aren't a lot of people behind me who have looked at the use tables in the articles of our zone that describe exactly what uses can be added. If we add properties that are not primary resident, we are putting a pure commercial use into a residential zone. And that in itself doesn't seem like such a big deal, but it weakens the whole nature of the code. And what's going to be next will be, what will be next? There'll be other commercial enterprises coming in saying, well, you let the motels come in down the block. Why can't I do something else? Put my restaurant here or my body shop there. It's that first chink in the dike, and it's really important to keep commercial areas, commercial zoning and residential zoning definite and separated. Secondly, we've got a severe housing shortage here. I don't know. And we need to preserve residential uses as much as we possibly can, rather allowing conversion to commercial use. Number 3, that was number 2. Some people contend that being a landlord of a long-term rental is just fraught with terrible, nightmarish experiences, and they conclude that this experience is so bad, City Council should let them just use those properties as short-term rentals. Well, my husband and I have been landlords in Denver for 40 years. Long-term, got to go fast. Long-term tenants, no big problems, never had an eviction. And
But Ms. Windenberg, I apologize. Your 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
Just thank you, Mary Beth. I didn't get a chance to say that.
I'm going to call the next 5 speakers. We are over halfway done. Carolyn Shaw, Maureen Wood, Norman Wilson, Alex Dodd, and Jacob Lill. So you 5 can make your way up. Carolyn Shaw, you can begin your remarks. Is Carolyn Shaw in the building? No Carolyn Shaw? Okay, next is Maureen Wood.
Hi, my name is Maureen Wood, and I live at 4392 Winona in the Berkeley neighborhood. First, I'd like to thank all of you for letting us all speak and listening. I know it's a long night. I have lived in the Berkeley neighborhood for 2 years, and when my husband and I bought our house, we were fortunate enough to be able to find a house with an accessory dwelling so that our parents could visit and our family members could visit and stay close to us. We don't have a hotel in our area that's close by where our family can spend time with us when they come to visit. Well, those are only, a few weeks out of the year, and we've also been fortunate enough to be able to open up that accessory dwelling to our neighbors' families when our families aren't staying in our accessory dwelling. I've really enjoyed meeting my neighbors' families. I've met so many grandparents and aunts and uncles, and as well as business travelers and people who are trying to move to the area and work for Regis. I've really enjoyed the amount of socialization and meeting neighbors that our short-term rental has brought to my life. And I really, I don't see the downside from us. I think that if nothing else, it has brought something positive to our neighborhood. So I would ask for you guys to vote for the ordinance today and support short-term rentals. Thank you.
Thank you. Norman Wilson?
Thank you. I'm Norman Wilson. I'm a Denver resident, and I'd like to quantify just a little bit. I think what we're really talking about is about a problem that is 1% of 1% of all residences in Denver, and so it reduces down to maybe 1 out of 1,000. That is the problem. Very simply, I take issue with the matter of this being this proposed legislation requiring primary residence. I don't think that's really addressing the issue. It's a rather blunt instrument. It's rather too simple for a more nuanced problem. I think maybe Councilman Flynn would understand this. The sitting zoning, for instance, offers many gradations, but the gradations are not entertained in this rather either-or proposal. We're moving toward more density, and there's more mobility. Again, I'm not sure that this is really addressed. It's, again, either-or. The STRs, sometimes the STRs are rather small properties on rather large lots. That would be another way of looking at the problem. Some even not occupying 10% of the lot itself. And the issues brought up with regard to problems typically could be covered by code issues, noise, excessive drinking, whatnot. We have code that covers this, and so it seems to me that is an issue that could be put aside. Neighborhood groups are very useful, but it's hard to be representative. You probably understand that best of all. And the neighborhood groups sometimes are not terribly representative, and they sometimes have a rather near horizon, and they don't take a long-range view. With regard to primary residence, travelers typically don't expect to have an owner or a primary resident in the property. And so to go back to the Airbnb issue, That is a model which could be troubling because it creates a kind of a density that maybe we don't want, a kind of very short term and very dividing up the properties. We really, to keep the property whole so it can return back to a residence maybe makes better sense. That would eliminate, that argues for eliminating primary residence. I would say that what we might want to do is, unfortunately, despite all the staff work, despite all the town hall meetings, maybe go back and take a more nuanced approach to this legislation.
Mr. Wilson, you're
Thank you very much.
3 minutes are up. Thank you. Alex Dodd.
Good evening, City Councilmen and women. Thanks for taking the time to be here. Thanks, concerned citizens, for being here, too. It's great to see such an engaged community. I really appreciate the Sharing Economy Task Force, led by Councilwoman Sussman's effort in re-legislating short-term rentals and other aspects of the sharing economy. I feel it's a valiant and well-intended, although severely misguided legislation in its current verbiage. In particular, the primary residence restriction has numerous economic repercussions, consequences that I don't think has been addressed by City Council or many citizens here. This housing shortage that many refer to, I don't understand that. The fact that vacancies in Denver's rental market that's arguably very saturated have been increasing month over month since January of this year. Many large apartment rental companies are turning to services such as Stay Alfred, large out-of-state conglomerates that manage dozens of short-term, if not more, short-term rental properties in Denver to quell the increasing vacancies in Denver's rental market. Short-term rentals are an effective way to increase the vibrancy of our city, to increase tourism to our city, and allow our city not to be constrained by limited hotel and lodging inventory amidst some of the most insurmountable amount of tourist demand that we've seen. RevPAR across the city is up year over year, season over season, and it shows no sign of stopping. Similarly, the number of short-term rental listings increase, and they also show no sign of stopping. If the primary residency restriction were to continue to be into place, it effectively would contribute greatly to the economic collapse of our rental market here and would have significant ramifications. Not to mention, it would also prohibit hosts that have relied on this income stream to sustain themselves and contribute to our community to continue hosting and allow this income stream. I can speak personally for the over $100,000 of lodging tax that I could have personally collected and remitted to the city last year, but had no structure to do so. Only large operators that were given special treatment by the city had the opportunity to remit this lodging tax last year. And by eliminating the ability of hosts to have additional residences other than their primary to rent out on a short-term basis, the city will be leaving millions of dollars of additional tax revenue on the table. Where am I getting these numbers from? Well, simply it's extending a macro out of what I know is the current vacation rental economy. In fact, there's been no economic feasibility study or impact study that's been presented by EXL nor Community Planning and Development, and I think it's incredibly short-sighted to be allowing the few vocal xenophobic members of our community to guide this legislation. Those with the most time on their hands should not be the ones that should be dictating this. It should be those that are contributing to the greatness in the city and contributing to the tourism market in our town too. As a fifth-generation native, member of the resident of the 9th District for 5 years, and concerned future Denver resident, I implore the city to table the legislation as is, or at least consider amendment allowing for non-primary residences to be rented. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Jacob Lill. And as Jacob comes up, I'll call the next 4. Keith Pryon, Andrea Phillips, Thad Texa, and George Burleson. Go ahead, Mr. Lill.
Good evening. My name is Jacob Lill, and I live in the Harvard Gulch neighborhood. So I want to share a little bit of my experience with Airbnb and short-term rentals. So several years ago, I'd never heard of Airbnb before. I had my aunt who was very sick with cancer in California, and I packed up my family, I packed up the dogs, and we went out there not knowing how long we were going to have to stay, but she was on her deathbed. There wasn't a hotel near to where she was staying and receiving treatment. The closest hotel was over 45 minutes away, We were able to find an Airbnb less than 5 minutes away to where my family could stay, to where our pets were allowed, to where we could cook meals for our families. And it was a really hard time in my family's life, but without that Airbnb at that time, it would have been a lot worse. That's how I came to know of short-term rentals and Airbnbs and VRBOs. Years later, I was presented the opportunity to work for a company that manages short-term rentals. I've been doing this for a little over a year now, and I've seen all types of guests. I've seen all types of property owners. I've seen all types of arrangements. I've seen rentals with primary residents, with non-primary residents, and everything in between. And I'll tell you, a few of the guests that I see the most in our line of work are traveling professionals coming to Denver for any number of reasons: doctors, lawyers, nurses, businessmen and women. More than anything, I see families, though. I see families visiting their children, visiting their parents, visiting new grandchildren. We see all types. We see roughly 2,000 guests per month. And in our entire time of being in business, we've had maybe a handful of issues, nothing ever too serious. The guests we see are great. Our property owners, they're great. One issue we've run into with our non-primary residents, property owners, are all the things in their house. And they're not able to manage a successful rental the way we like to do it and provide the best guest experience possible. I asked the City Council to reconsider the primary residence restriction because I think it's cheating the guests, I think it's cheating the city, and I think it's cheating the short-term rental industry from maturing into the industry that I know it could become, and I don't think it's right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lill. Keith Pryor.
Good evening, Mr. President, Council. Thanks so much for hearing us and allowing us to have this opportunity to speak. A couple of things. One, I definitely applaud the process. Thank you, Mary Sussman, for leading this and the, bringing together the people to work through this. And I definitely am in very much support of having a framework in which to work short-term rentals, which is desperately needed to regulate this. I do not support that it be a primary resident. If you listen to a lot of the comments tonight, a lot of them really center around, well, it needs to be stable for our neighborhood. People need to send their children. This does not allow for neighborhood cohesiveness. These people would not allow a long-term rental. Most long-term rental leases, 30 days, 60 days, or a year, really do not send their kids to those schools. And we allow long-term rentals throughout our city and have. Most of the people that have spoke against this ordinance and having that short-term rental be a primary residence would not really want to have long-term residents be, long-term rentals even be allowed in their neighborhoods. So I want you to kind of think about that, because even with long-term rentals, you still have the same issues that a lot of people have brought up throughout this evening in regards to those concerns from the neighborhoods. I would like to see something of an amendment brought forth. When we did the rezoning for the entire neighborhood, or for the entire city, we brought forth the ADU. Again, huge opposition from neighborhoods that would not allow ADUs in their neighborhoods. Now that we've had that passed, neighborhoods are coming forth and saying, wow, I really want that. I have an elderly parent. I have somebody that I need to bring into my family situation. I would like to have an ADU. My neighborhood doesn't allow that. I want zoning to rewrite this to allow an overlay district for my neighborhood to have an ADU. And so now that we've had them, and now that you're seeing this come into place, you're really seeing people look to that as like, oh, I'd like to augment my income by having an ADU and having that additional income stream by having an additional rental property on my lot, which we do not allow in the city unless you're in certain districts. And it's also helped with our housing crisis as a way to look at our housing crisis is to allow ADUs to occur. So these same neighborhoods that did not want to allow ADUs did not want to allow for a 3-story building in your neighborhood where there was an existing church on Colorado Boulevard and Monaco that was a great transit corridor, and they are in a lawsuit about that. So these same neighbors who are complaining about ADUs, about a housing crisis, are also complaining about density in which to solve our actual housing crisis.
Mr. Pryor, you have 3 minutes up.
So,
and could you say
great.
your name
Thanks
for the
so
record,
much.
too?
What's that?
Could you say your name for the record?
Oh, sure. Keith Pryor. So, thank you. I support this, but not the primary residency.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor. Andrea Phillips? Andrea Phillips is not here? That Texa.
Thad Texa. Members of council, amazingly, some people actually think of me as disrespectful. But I'll tell you what real disrespect is. It's people who violate our laws, who don't care about their neighbors, who come in front of you and testify openly of that, and then say, sanction my behavior. It would be one thing if these people said, I think short-term rentals are a good idea. Let's talk about it. I'd engage in that discussion. They don't do that. Let me tell you, what you do tonight isn't going to make any difference to these people at all. I guarantee you, they're going to keep doing what they're doing. They talk about how much they contribute to their neighborhood. Has one of them, as Councilman Flynn's amendment would have suggested, gone around to their neighbors and said, is it okay if I do this? And if one of them said no, say, okay, I care about you as a... No, they don't. They only care about their own profit, and they're going to keep doing what they're doing. And you know what? As much as I disrespect them, I'm more disappointed in you, because it's your job to uphold the law. But you turn a blind eye. You know, the enforcement mechanisms that are in this new thing, I don't know whether they're a farce, a joke, or a fantasy, and you know it too. Nothing's going to change. You people have no problem enforcing the law against the homeless. You people have no problem enforcing the law against poor minority group members who can't afford property. These people testify over and over to you they're breaking the law, and you hold up your hands and say, it's unenforceable. We can't do it. You know what you ought to do? You ought to do what you do best. Do nothing. Leave things exactly the way they are. Let it continue to be illegal. They're going to continue doing exactly what they're doing, but at least the upstanding residents of this city, when there are bad actors, could call and file a complaint. The only thing you're doing is giving these selfish, self-minded people a legal defense to do what they're going to be doing anyway.
Next we have George Burleson. George Burleson? Is George Burleson in beauty? Is Burleson not here? Okay, I will call the next 5.
Georgia.
Oh, I'm sorry. Georgia Burleson. I am sorry about that. Georgia Burleson. Thank you for that correction. Next, Kevin Dixon, Cindy Sestrich, Claire Kelly, Steve Ramsey, and Sarah McCarthy. So is Kevin Dixon in the building? We have no Kevin Dixon? Okay, next is Cindy Sestrich.
Good evening. I would like to start out, I'm Cindy Sestrich from the Cheeseman Park West neighborhood. And I would like to start out thanking Mary Beth Sussman, Councilwoman Sussman. She had a very long and proper public process. Everyone got to talk, and I think we all understand both sides of the issue. I think we understand the neighborhoods as well as the people who need to make a profit for various reasons. I do appreciate that the amendments that were put forth before we got here tonight didn't go through the public process and they didn't come forth. I think there's time to do that at a later time. My neighbors in Cheeseman Park West realize that we live in a very popular neighborhood. Everybody wants to live there. And by talking to all of them, the thing that they wanted me to most pronounce is that they want to live near their work. They don't want the housing stock, separate apartments, separate houses to be used by people who don't work and live in Denver. If you want to be a primary resident and rent out a part of your house, you are able to do that. So we all support the primary resident. But we do not like it when full units are used and people are not committed to this city. Those units should be saved for people so that we can reduce the environmental impact and all the other issues that happen with people who have to live outside of the city or far from their jobs. The residential zoning is the other part. This ordinance does keep residential zoning as residential and commercial as commercial. I also, when I travel, use short-term rental platforms. VRBO I have used for the most part, and recently when I was in Toronto, they did not have a primary resident regulation, and they saw the repercussions of that. They have venture capitalists that have 16-plus units, and it's taking away and creating a shortage of housing. They are in the process of changing that right now. So we're starting out at a very good point. We don't have to deal with deleting. And then regulation in the licensing, I think this is good. I would like to see very effective enforcement and the money put forth towards that.
Ms. Estridge, you're
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next we have Claire Kelly.
Good evening, President Hurden and City Council members. It's about 8:45. I'm sure you all would much rather be at home. Thank you so much for staying late and listening to all this. My name is Claire Kelly. I'm a Denver resident. I live at 1267 Josephine Street, and I am here to request that you consider a little bit of a fine-tuning on this regulation. I support the bill that is in front of you all, with the exception of the primary residency clause. I support short-term rental of residential investment property within more densely populated neighborhood corridors that are currently zoned R3 or greater or equivalent. I believe that's the old zoning code. I absolutely believe that owners of a STR business should be required to pay applicable hospitality tax, meet or exceed safety requirements, and hold applicable insurance. Short-term rentals offer a unique product that differs from traditional hotels and motels. They offer a direct and closer connection to the community that people are visiting and to the city's culture. They are a more affordable way to travel, and they are a component of the sharing economy that is present worldwide. As a third-generation Denver native, VRBO customer, and residential and investment property owner, I support a thoughtful rollout of the allowance of short-term rentals beyond primary residences to encourage tourism, foster entrepreneurism. The entrepreneurs who I've spoken to here, they're business people, they're entrepreneurs, they're not evil. Am I evil? I don't think so. Replace the primary residency clause with thoughtful restrictions that mirror the existing zoning regulations. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Steve Ramsey.
Hello, I'll keep this short. I just wanted to bring a little personal perspective to this. I want to thank the City Council for taking the time and much effort to study these issues. Also particularly want to thank Mary Beth for getting the ball rolling. I'm Steve Ramsey. I'm a Platt Park resident. I've been a Platt Park resident since 1987. Very pleased to be represented by Jolon Clark. Also grateful for both Mary Beth and Paul Cashman for taking time to discuss these issues with me over the time that this has been in play. So just very briefly, personally, I'm a small businessman. I'm a self-employed commercial photographer. I have been for 30 years, and I strongly support the ordinance being proposed tonight. I've been an Airbnb host for about 3 years. And during that time, particularly being self-employed, the income that I received from that helped greatly in the last 4 or 5 years with the financial situation, which probably has affected just about everyone on some level. I can also tell you that income helps smooth out the financial ups and downs of being self-employed. And lastly, it's enabled me to spend some much-needed time with my parents, who are both in their late 80s. So it's been very much of a positive for me, and the people that I have encountered being a host, and the whole process has been surprisingly enjoyable from top to bottom. So in closing, I just want to say the sharing economy is here to stay. Short-term rentals are a part of that. And I believe common sense regulation makes that a positive part of any city, large and small, worldwide, and particularly in the amazing city of Denver, Colorado. I support the proposed legislation for licensing and regulating short-term rentals. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. Sarah McCarthy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time and attention, and thank you to all the people who are here, both on this issue and a later issue that you still have to get to. Councilwoman Sussman, I think one sign of a good piece of legislation is that nobody likes it. And I think that's what is here tonight. Nobody really likes this, and I am one of those. And I have two concerns in particular that have been mentioned briefly, but I want to focus a little bit. One, I really think, is the question of public policy in terms of what really do we mean by a residential neighborhood. And I think that allowing even the primary resident to have an STR in an R1 zone is opening Pandora's box, and it's duplicitous on our part as a group to say this is a residential neighborhood. I noticed an advertisement not long ago that said that a house was for sale and that you could earn $25,000 as a short-term rental. I sure hope that that property is not paying residential property taxes, because to me that's a commercial enterprise and should not be allowed in a residential zone. Change the zone if that's what you want, but not to mix as we are proposing to do tonight. My second area of concern has to do with enforcement. The enforcement that's proposed here is what is called permissive. This is what they can do in excise and license or in neighborhood inspection services. But there is nothing in that ordinance that I saw that a short-term rental owner shall do. Or there's nothing there that says that the city shall enforce. And I think Denver has an enforcement issue, and when I brought it up in years past, it is mentioned as a budget issue. But we're now putting together an ordinance that has a $25 licensing fee that will bring with it enforcement issues. And Denver isn't enforcing the ordinances it already has on the books, including short-term rentals. No cease and desist orders have been issued, yet there's 2,000 advertisements saying, I intend to violate the ordinance. The city says, oh, can't do anything about it. I disagree. The city can. Lots of ordinances like the night sky, off-street parking, many different ordinances are not enforced, and I'm fearful this won't be enforced either. And I wish you luck in moving this forward. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. McCarthy. I'm going to call the next five. Enrique, your last name got cut off. Marguisa, Mike Sosha, Maine Benedict, Amberly Martin, Stacy Neer. So you five can make your way up to the front. And Enrique, you can begin your remarks.
Hi, good afternoon. Good evening. I think short-term rentals are a great idea. Let's talk about it. First, neighborhoods are not owned by people. I hear a lot of people out getting up here and talking about their neighborhood and trying to protect their neighborhood. Their home is what they own. And if you own your home, you should be able to do what you want inside of that home. I don't use a home as a short-term rental property, but I see the benefits of what it does to the community by people opening up their doors, sharing their environment. I do have businesses here, retail businesses. People on average spend $3 to every $1 when they travel. If you just have people staying in hotels in downtown Denver, then all you're doing is supporting national chains where everybody just goes outside of their hotel and goes to the Cheesesteak Factory and the Olive Garden and all of those types of places. I want to try to spend my time developing business opportunities and businesses and employing, by the end of this year, should be over 100 people in residential neighborhoods. And the guests that come from short-term rentals in those residential neighborhoods are the people that are going to go to the businesses that I go and handcraft and make and take pride in, so everyone can have an opportunity to use them and to benefit from them. I don't support the primary residence. I think it's restrictive, and it also discourages people from coming into Denver and bringing money in from other places. I do travel using Airbnb and VRBO, and I think it's enhances my experiences tremendously, and I would not go and rent a home for 3 or 4 days when the owner of the property was in the home. It just wouldn't make sense to me personally. Thank you very much for all of your time, and I hope you make good decisions. Thank you.
And sir, could you say your name for the record?
Enrique Margulis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mike Sosha.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. My name is Mike Soka. I live in beautiful Green Valley Ranch, so I'm part of Stacey Gilmore's district. And my husband, Matthew, and I have been hosts for Airbnb for over 2 years now. And I have to say that we're pretty much exactly what you guys are proposing. We have a primary residence, and we rent out the basement. We have been very happy with what we've done, and I just want to say that we think that it's really brought a sense of community with the type of person that we've brought into our home. We do live kind of out in the suburbs, and we've had a lot of people that have been moving to the city of Denver, and they wanted some advice, and they wanted to talk to people that have lived here, that know the neighborhoods, et cetera, and kind of bounce off us what they wanted and what they were looking for. And we've been there to be able to talk to them, talk them through things. We've also hosted people that have come from another country, and they won the green card lottery, which I didn't even know was a thing, honestly. And they came and they moved from Spain into our home for a large amount of time, and we got to help them, to help Americanize them to things. We got to have them try root beer floats for the first time. We got to try to go on the light rail for the first time. So we were really able to help them to get acquainted. They took care of our house as though it was their own. They absolutely adored our dog. They helped us a little bit by letting the dog out, et cetera, if we were working late. So I want to say that we are very pro this legislation. We would eventually maybe like to sit on the board that's going to be looking at additional legislation, maybe for secondary homes, but I think we need to start somewhere. I think this is a good place to start, and I think that we can kind of see how it goes from there because, again, like everybody else said, we're not sure what this is going to actually do to the inventory. So once we make that assessment, I think that we should take another look at it and maybe make amendments and hopefully go from there. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Maine Benedict?
Members of Council, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Marie Benedicts, and I live in Denver City and County. So I have some serious concerns with the bill that's in front of you. Primarily, I am concerned that it will create an economic incentive to remove properties from the market that would otherwise have been available as residential homes. And I think we all agree that affordable housing and housing in general is a problem for Denver, so to reduce supply and drive up pricing for the supply that's there, I think should cause some great concern. Certainly the primary resident requirement would be a minimum, I feel, in terms of safeguarding that doesn't happen to a greater extent that we can live with. And I would challenge you to see if there aren't other things that can be done to further reduce the impact on the available housing for actual residents. Some other people have spoken powerfully to the economic incentives here tonight for converting residences to rentals. Bessie did so, Joel as well. My other concern relates to enforcement and regulation. I am not convinced that the bill before you tonight has sufficient protections for neighbors and property owners. And I would, again, ask you to look carefully about what can be done to make sure that problems can be sorted out, that there are sufficient resources and sufficient rules in place that can be enforced in order to deal with bad actors. We heard a couple of people speak here tonight, I believe. Mr. May, I didn't catch his first name, spoke about it taking a year and a half to get a bad actor closed down. Is this what neighbors are going to have to go through? Secondly, Charlie also spoke to neighbors becoming vigilantes. That's certainly not the life we want to lead. I feel as if what's before you tonight is a pretty fundamental decision, and I think we've heard sort of voices for both sides. Should neighborhoods be used to maximize profits and also to fill the city's coffers? What an exciting positive argument. Or should neighborhoods be available as housing for our many residents who need to live in Denver, close to work, close to where their families are, and be available to folks of all income levels? So I urge you to think very carefully about that tonight and see what you can do to make the neighborhood protections even stronger. And I leave you with the words from the gentleman from CPD who quoted from Blueprint Denver and said, unenforceable standards should not be included in the zoning code. So thank you for your time, and please be thoughtful tonight. And did I say that my name is Marie Benedicts? I did. Otherwise, you would ask me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Amberly Martin.
Hi, I'm Amberly Martin, and I live in the Sunnyside neighborhood of Denver. I actually just recently moved to this neighborhood and previously lived in Central Business District. Just a little bit about my background. Many of you have actually heard my husband's side of the story, and unfortunately he couldn't be here today because he is actually out for National Guard duty. So I'm here to tell you about my side of the story and why I think we should vote for this amendment. So a little bit about me. I'm also a veteran of the Colorado National Guard and now get to serve as a military spouse when he's gone. During this time, it's really hard for us to supplement our income when he's getting paid by the military, and so we've used Airbnb to do that for us. Like he is gone this week, I was able to have somebody come into my home and stay with me and get to enjoy their company and have somebody there that I can share dinner with and really get to know. It's been pretty wonderful having the guests that we do and having the opportunities that we've been given by doing Airbnb. I know there are some concerns brought up about short-term rentals, even with primary residents, with our kids in our neighborhoods. And I want to tell you about what I do. Because of this supplemental income that I get time to volunteer during the day in my local schools. So I get to go in and read to kids in my neighborhood. There's a school across the street from me that I get to go in and get to know my neighborhood children. And I'm really excited about being able to, in the future, have my kids attend Denver Public Schools. I think it's a wonderful school district, and I want to be able to stay in the neighborhood where I am so that my family can grow there too. And that wouldn't be possible without this supplemental income that we get from Airbnb. Another part of it is that we also do travel for quite a bit, and it's been wonderful that we can rent out our full home at this time while we travel. So we actually do have people that come, whole families that will come and stay at our home while we're gone, and then we rent out our second bedroom when we are home. A few of our guests that we have had, like I said, we have somebody that's staying with us right now, also a military veteran, a West Point grad who is moving to Denver, and he's checking out neighborhoods and trying them out. We've had a park ranger from England, and we've had Wicked's Elphaba stay with us when Wicked was in town. So, and if anybody is a musical fan, she was with us too. So, I just want to tell you about all of our great guests that we've had and what it does for us as a military family in the Denver community.
Thank you. Stacy Neer? Stacy Neer in Chambers? All right, we'll go to the next 5. Shayla Hebitz, Michael Leventhal, Gary Mason, Ling McPhail, and Allison Alt.
Good evening. My name is Shala Hebitz, and I founded the Denver Short-Term Rental Alliance over a year ago to give non-primary residency homeowners, local businesses, and citizens a voice. Within the last year, we have provided the following evidence and facts to the City Council. A DU study provided by 3 esteemed professors, which estimates $2 million in tax revenue and $21 million in ancillary spending from short-term rental renters per year. These figures are based solely on non-primary residency rentals. We attended all 4 community town halls where proponents of eliminating the primary residency requirement outnumbered opponents 3-1. We conducted a Denver-specific poll, which showed that 70% of residents support regulating both primary and non-primary residency rentals. We provided a legal document outlining the potential property rights infringements if the bill is approved as it stands. We have sent hundreds of letters to the City Council. We have dispelled the myth that non-primary residency rentals impact affordable housing. Non-primary residency rentals represent 0.1% of residential homes in Denver. They are not impacting affordable housing. And just today, we delivered a petition with 894 signatures urging that the City Council regulate all short-term rentals. The Denver Short-Term Rental Alliance is extremely disappointed that despite the facts and evidence, the proposed short-term rental regulation remains unchanged. The current regulation is based on a vocal, fear-based minority, most of whom have not been negatively impacted by short-term rentals. The city will set a dangerous precedent if they ignore the facts in favor of appeasing the unsubstantiated fears of a few. We once again urge that the Denver City Council examine the facts and apply them to the regulations. and offer a compromise amendment which fairly regulates all short-term rentals in Denver. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe. Thank you. Michael Leventhal? Michael Leventhal? Not in the building. Gary Mason?
Hi, I'm Gary Mason. I live in the Highlands neighborhood near the intersection of Perry and 29th Street. I'm up here just to really share why I think Airbnb is a boon to Denver and my neighborhood. I just wanted to point out that what makes Airbnb special, many people have talked about the economic benefits, and they're certainly there. I think not only for the city, but also for the homeowner. Since doing Airbnb for about a year, I've had the resources to make a number of considerable improvements to my home. But more importantly, what I really wanted to share about is the human experience, which actually surprised me. I'd had a long-term tenant stay in my place. I was looking to get someone else, and someone said, well, try Airbnb. And I thought it was going to be strange having guests into my house. But what I discovered was just a dramatic a shift in the quality of human experience in relating to people and dealing with people. First of all, the quality of people I have staying at my place are exceptional, quite varied, not simply millennials, as some people seem to imply. I've had people from 20 up till 80 years of age. I've had biotech entrepreneurs, young married couples, professors, nurses, lots of parents visiting their sons or daughters who live nearby, often with grandkids, artists, a fire chief, financial managers, state director for Steinway Pianos, medevac military pilots, retired engineers, people moving to Denver and needing a place as a base camp before they move. But what is truly special about what it is that represents a new way of socializing, I was surprised how many of these people have become personal friends of mine. I've been to their houses for meals. They've been to mine. I've had them over to parties, cocktail parties, where not only have they met each other, new people who are moving to town, but they've met friends of mine. Many of them have asked me to, stay. I have a couple in Amsterdam that want me to come stay with them. This is part of an emerging way of socializing that I think is different from what our neighborhoods have been in the past. In other words, part of what I'm getting at is when people come stay at these short-term rentals, they are distinctly not hotel experiences. Nothing like that at all. It's completely something very different. I think people have experienced that to some extent when they have Uber drivers ride in Uber. It's a little bit of a different experience from being with a cab driver. It's even much more so that when you have somebody stay at your house, when you have them share with you about their experiences during the day. I might say that their experience in the neighborhood is not that of somebody simply as a hotel guest. They're walking through the neighborhood, relating to my neighbors. They say hello to them as neighbors. And so all in all, I think it's a human's experience. It's not simply an option to make more money. It is part of the new way we'll be relating to people in the future.
Mr.
Breaks
Mason,
down a lot of barriers.
So your 3 minutes are up.
I see. Thanks.
Thank you. Ling McPhail?
Good evening. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to everybody. My name is Ling McPhail, and my husband and I live at 1530 Locust Street. We're permanent residents there, and we rent our basement out as an Airbnb. My son joined the Air Force a couple years back, and the same day I lost my job. So we ended up having to figure out what we were going to do with our economy. My husband is a forklift operator, and I am an artist. So we decided to try Airbnb. It helped us save our we were able to stay in our house, and we were also able to then rent that same house out, which helped us pay our mortgage. But we also were able to keep my son lodgings when he came home on leave. We also tried out Airbnb before we decided to do it. We thought, well, let's just take a look. So we actually flew to San Antonio to watch him graduate from boot camp, and we stayed in an Airbnb. And I want to just say that we take very much pride in our lodging, and we are not partiers, and we don't enjoy people who like to party staying with us. And we put that in our listing. We're very we've never had any guests that were disrespectful. I mean, we have house rules, and we're very adamant about certain things, and nobody's ever argued with us about that. In fact, we've had people come from Paris, and like this one lady came from Paris with her niece. She didn't speak any English. We used Google Translate to communicate. She was delightful. And she ended up, after she left, we met her cousin, who is a neighbor, lives about 5 blocks away. I never would have met that man. But now we greet each other in the supermarket. And that same lady has sent us Christmas cards, a sweater, a coffee mug, just really sweet things. I would never, and these broken English letters that we just adore. So those are the kinds of guests that we have had that we've totally enjoyed. We've had lots of guests. Apparently I make mean scones. People like my scones. They write about them on my reviews. And it's actually made me think about maybe I should start a cottage industry selling scones. It's not impossible. I have to look into it. But I mean, so it's not Steve Wozniak, but I'm definitely starting to think about other ideas that are, that could be important and helpful. At any rate, our lives are better because of Airbnb. It has opened our minds, and we're really glad that we've opened our doors. Thanks.
Thank you. Allison Alt.
Hi, thank you. My name is Allison Alt, and I own in the Low-High neighborhood. I moved out of my small 750 square foot, 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom home because as a single woman at the time, I lost my job and I could not afford the mortgage. I rented the home to full-time renters for 2 years, and between renters spent thousands of dollars and weeks of my time to get the home back into pristine condition. Frustrated, I saw Airbnb as a solution. I took out a loan to furnish the house with new furniture and made improvements like an exposed brick wall and landscaping. I'm not just a host, I'm a super host. And in 6 months, I've garnered over 60 5-star reviews, and my property has been featured in a New York magazine as one of the best Airbnbs in Denver. I'm passionate about operating my short-term rental, and I'm personable with my guests as well as my neighbors. I live 10 blocks away from the property and am available should there be an issue. In contrast, I have friends who are also my neighbors who own a new-build townhome 5 blocks away. They have been living in California for a year and renting to guests through Airbnb. The 6-person property has hosted rappers, bachelor parties, and hosted fun overnighters. My guests are nurses, doctors, families visiting other family members, business people, and couples celebrating their anniversary. I don't understand how the primary residence rule protects my neighborhood by putting me, a passionate and available host, out of business. My Low-High property is part of my retirement portfolio. I can rent it to full-time renters and make a little bit of money to fix it up between tenants and pay the rising taxes. But with the opportunity I have with Airbnb, my cute little home, one of the best in Denver, is my retirement. I support the bill being discussed today, but not the primary residence rule. Please consider the impact this blanket rule will actually have. I don't doubt that there are irresponsible hosts, as 6 complaints and a few vocal people have presented, but please don't punish people like me who improve the street and add to the richness of my neighborhood and local businesses. The primary residence rule does not fit the perceived fears or does not fix the perceived fears of short-term rentals. Also, on another note, a few people have argued about the inventory, and a couple of years ago, the Denver Post published something on the construction defect law, and before that was passed, the condo market made up 25% of all housing in Denver, and by 2014 dwindled down to 3.5%. Our non-primary residents, short-term rentals, are less than 1%, and so I feel like the council's efforts would make a bigger impact elsewhere.
Thank you, Ms. Holt. I am calling the last three speakers up: Ann Elizabeth, Gertie Grant, and Kim Knights. And I see Miss Elizabeth coming up. Is Gertie Grant in?
Yes, she's coming up.
Okay, you're good.
Hi, I'm Ann Elizabeth Globeville, and I appreciate the opportunity to address the council. I would like, first of all, to ask the council to suspend the statistical. Let's just agree that there's lots of people that have anecdotally documented the benefits, the shortcomings, the dangers, et cetera, and make this decision as comprehensivists, understanding a city is an organism and managing economic diversification is an important thing to do to help the net income of families increase, especially in neighborhoods where people need to hang on to their property as the cost of living goes up for some of the right reasons and some of the less caring reasons. I'd like us to be in a world-class city where everyone matters, but I'd like us to add the word equally to that as a city. I would like for the people that, bless your hearts, have worked hard and do great Airbnbs to, I should tell you I'm supporting this, but with the home, with the principal residents, just so you're clear where I'm coming from. Folks who have had the benefit of, maybe doing a great job, I'm sorry, but enforcement is an important thing, and I think there are three classifications: primary residence, STRs, absentee return on investment-centric investors, which are the danger, and the neighborhood proximity entrepreneurs that have been in sort of a grace period. And I appreciate this country was started because somebody broke some laws. And that's sometimes how innovation comes. But we need to have some kind of regulation that honors the sovereign wealth of the property owner, but also doesn't open the gateway for people that are also owners that could come in before we understand what the full potential of the inventory of our diverse housing needs and creative use of our spaces can be as we solve problems. I would like OED and human resources and the humane social services to enter into this, to offer subsidies to folks that have short-term rentals, to help with transitional housing and provide even power up, instead of an advisory committee, I'd love it to the short-term rental advisory committee. Let's call it the Commission on Short-Term Policy, Housing Enterprise Ethics, and enhance its authority. Let's be holistic about this. I feel fine about giving folks an opportunity to use their property as they see fit, but civilization is a combination of private rights of all types as well as a common good. And an economic vision can be well served by using the gray areas in a way where you do it with equity. If we're going to tax, I believe in taxes when there's an infrastructure of a city that needs to be supported. But let's give tax breaks relative to a constructive relationship between individual economy and helping mentor people out of dark economies into a diverse economy in their homes. And one last thing, don't call me xenophobe, don't call me reactionary. I'm thoughtful, discerning, analytic, and we don't need to do those labels. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Gertie Grant.
Good evening, Council. My name is Gertrude Grant. I live at 242 South Lincoln Street, Denver, Colorado, and I want to thank Mary Beth Sussman for her diligent efforts in crafting this ordinance with the help of a lot of involved people. I reluctantly support Council Bill 261 as it stands, reluctant because the current situation is untenable and unenforceable. I would like to make 2 points. I am a landlady of 4 property. No, I'm not much of a lady, but I do own some property. I own 4 properties, including an apartment in the house where I live. I hear people saying that because having long-term rentals is fraught with bad experience, that they should be allowed to turn those properties into short-term rentals. As a landlord of 35 years, I suggest that you need to develop skills in order to be a successful landowner. I offer well-maintained, good value homes that attract many applicants, allowing me to select responsible tenants who are likely to stay in place for multiple years and be good neighbors. My current 5 tenants have been with me for from 3 to 20 years, and it is a pleasure to have them in my neighborhood. My second point and concern is that short-term rentals have already turned houses in my residential neighborhood into weekend destination resorts. Why? Because of our beautiful city, our wonderful climate, an increasingly robust entertainment district like South Broadway, and the limitations on where marijuana can be smoked. I just want you to see what was on the cover of the New York Times Sunday Travel magazine 3 weekends ago. It says, Colorado, the promised land of pot, the mile-high state. In our neighborhood, we had one property that was only one of 4 owned by a Florida investor who advertised it as cannabis-friendly. The neighbors reported it as a disruptive, smelly, short-term rental that finally was shut down by the Board of Adjustment Zoning. There are other properties in our neighborhood that Charlie Bush has testified to that have become weekend party houses. While any long-term neighbor can be a weekend party person, one has a chance to work out respectful relationships over time, get law enforcement and zoning involved if necessary, but with different tenants every weekend and non-resident distant landowners, solving the differences in lifestyles is nigh to impossible. I urge you to pass the current ordinance with the primary residence intact, but I also would ask you to please, when you're developing the next budget, put in
Ms. Grant.
adequate personnel to enforce it. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Kim Knight.
Hello, I'm Kim Knightis, and I live at 1013 East 26th Avenue, and this is in the 5 Points area. And I'm brand new to the Airbnb. I just have my first visitor right now this week. And so I'm surprised to hear that this has been a conversation for 2 years. And I guess what I'm hoping is that we can vote on this and pass the ordinance for primary residence. I also would like to, in the future, be able to approve maybe a second home. But in the meantime, I think having the ability to make a decision today would be in the best interest for the city of Denver. I think that it's going to improve the economy as far as local economy in the neighborhood for the local coffee shops, the restaurants, the breweries. My tenant that's here for the week is here for a wedding, and next week my second tenant will be here for the Bob Dylan concert. So I'm going to have a variety of people here visiting. And I also am supporting the cleaning ladies or men, whoever, as far as local economy and helping pay individuals in the city. And last but not least, I think it allows for homeowners to be able to subsidize their income, and I hope you approve the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our speakers. We will now